edge technologies. And today I'm going to show you how to adjust the nose alignment on a Turbo 338 or any FMB machine on a sliding headstock lathe. This is nose alignment for a sliding headstock lathe on an FMB. So we're going to start down here. We're going to start with the telescopic nose firmly attached to the lathe spindle adaptation. Okay, we're attached here and tight. Okay, this alignment procedure begins with assuming that the lathe adaptation plate has already successfully been aligned to spindle center. That's very important that we have the lathe adaptation aligned to spindle center first. Then we mount the nose to the lathe adaptation, and now we're going to bring the nose into the bar feeder nose clamp. In this case, I have the nose clamp already loose, and I have it free at its mounting point to the FMB. I also have the FMB laser aligned to the spindle center. At this point, I'm going to install the nose into the clamp. And this one's not cooperating. We're going to install the nose into the clamp fully until the flange seats all the way against the face of the clamp. At that point, I'm going to tighten the clamp with these two bolts over here. These two bolts right here tighten the clamp on the end of the nose. We're carefully tightening these two bolts and try and do it as evenly as possible. If it's not perfect, it's not catastrophic. However, we try to do it relatively evenly so we get an even spacing on the top and on the bottom. I tighten those bolts up completely until that clamp is completely tightened on the end of the nose. Notice I still have the block free from the front of the bar loader so that it's mobile. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the Z-axis headstock of the lathe back near rear over travel. Sometimes it's all the way to the Z negative or the rear limit over travel. Sometimes I leave it a little bit separated. I want a little bit of a gap here. I want enough of this stage of the nose that I can get a hold of it. So sometimes we're really close and there's not enough nose there for me to grab. So I want a little bit of space there. In this case, we're going to go all the way to Z negative over travel. So there's my Z negative over travel of the headstock. Notice I've got a decent amount of material here. I can grab this middle stage of the nose. Notice it's free. It's important that that's free. And that's actually the purpose of this alignment, is to align this clamp to this adaptation plate to remain a freely moving nose. Okay? Once we're in this position, the next step we're going to take is we're going to bring these, there's 6 bolts on the face of this clamp. There's 2 6mm bolts that attach it to the plate, and then there's 4 4mm set screws that adjust the alignment. Okay, I'm going to tighten the 6mm bolts just enough to where they touch, just so that it's not completely sloppy loose. Then, notice it still moves, but it's not completely sloppy loose. Then I want to bring all 4 of these set screws in, and notice this one happens to be loose. I think all 4 of these are loose. I want to screw them in until I feel them touch the surface of this plate and stop. I'm not tightening them, I'm just turning them until they touch so that I know I have contact with the plate. All 4 of them are now contacting the plate, okay? At this point, and I'm reaching inside so I can actually reach inside of this nose and guide it right now. I'm lifting up ever so slightly just to take the slop out. So I'm lifting up on the front section of this nose, or on the inside of the nose, just enough so that it doesn't sag down. And then I'm going to snug these 2 6mm just enough so that this clamp holds itself in place. And while I do that, I'm roughly leveling it. Bubble level is not crucial. If you want to do that, that's fine, but it's not critical. But I just want it at this point to be able to hold itself in position and not be loose. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adjusting these 4 adjustment set screws. Okay? While I do that, I'm feeling this stage of the nose for a free movement. I want rotational and ideally horizontal movement. Okay? As free and as loose as I can possibly get it is the goal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of these bolts, and it doesn't matter which one you start with. I start with this one nearest me, and I'm going to slowly tighten this bolt while I move this nose section back and forth, and I feel it getting looser, and it's getting looser, and it's getting looser. Now it's not. Now it's starting to get tighter again. And I'm going to back up just a hair, and I'm going to find the spot where it was loosest, roughly. I'm going to stop there and go on to the next one. Do the same thing. I turn it and I'm feeling and see if it gets looser. If it gets looser, I keep going. If it gets tighter like it just did, I stop and I back up and look for the loosest spot. Then I move on to the next one. Now it's getting looser, and then it just stopped and got tighter, so I stop there. Move on to the next one, and I do this all the way around and find the loose. Oh, that just freed up real good on that one. Look, I can do it with 2 fingers now. And now it starts to get tighter, and I back it up just a hair, and I find the spot where it was the loosest. The freest movement possible is our goal. Once I've achieved that, by adjusting all 4 of those set screws, I come back with the 6mm wrench, and I slowly tighten these 2 bolts, making sure that it remains free. If it starts to get tight again, I stop and I go back to the 4 set screws. It's starting to get a little snug. I'm going to stop and I'm going to go back to the 4 set screws one more time and double check them and see if I can free it up just a little bit more. Now I remember that this set screw really opened the door for me, so I'm actually going to start there. And it did. It freed up a little bit on that one. And I'm going to continue all the way around again. And it freed up some more on that one and got really free again there. And then I'm going to go to this one. And then it started to tighten up, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to go back here. And it started to tighten up, so I'm going to stop and back it up just a hair. Now I've got it nice and free again. I'm going back to the 6mm bolts. And I'm going to tighten them slowly, again making sure that it doesn't bind the nose. And I'll do that back and forth as necessary until I get these 2 bolts completely tight. Oh, it just tightened up on me a little bit right when I did that last push. So I'm going to back it off just a hair. And I'm going to go back to the 4mm and see if I can get it to free up again. That freed it right back up. Now I can go back here again. And it's just a dance back and forth until we get both of these bolts tight and we have this as free as possible. You see I got 2 fingers, I can move it all the way in and out, rotational and lateral. Okay? The last check I do is I'll run the Z-axis forward and just make sure I don't have a tight spot. In most cases, that's not an issue because the nose tends to be looser as it extends rather than tighter. It gets tighter as you collapse it. So if I'm setting this at the most collapsed point, that's usually ideal, but I always double check it as I extend it just to make sure I don't get a tight spot. So I'm gonna move the Z forward here. And I'm gonna check it again, and it's still nice and free. We'll go a little further, and it's still nice and free. It's snugged a little bit, but it's still free, it's not binding. And I'm still free all the way in and out. That's how we do a telescopic nose alignment for an FMB bar feeder on a sliding headstock lathe.